Although within about a month, the Republicans are going to take over the House, there are a few pieces of legislation that need to be passed, or at least likely to be passed during that period. And one is the reauthorization of the National Defense Authorization Act. And actors on both sides are trying to get into it what they want. That isn't necessarily explicitly about defense, but is still potentially very important. Let's start with the good. So you have Representative Khanna, who told the Young Turks that he wants to push a $15 federal minimum wage into the NDAA reauthorization. He says, I'm pushing for requiring it as part of the NDAA. If the big oil industry wants to hold the NDAA hostage to weakening environmental protections, then progressives should demand a $15 wage as part of securing our votes. We can call the progressive deal the deal for the American people to finally get a raise. He says that this is currently being discussed internally inside of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And what I love about this isn't just that he wants to raise the federal minimum wage, which would be great, obviously, but that he's doing this in direct response to Senator Joe Manchin attempting to use the same tactic to push what his plan that we've previously talked about many times on the show to fast track permitting for some energy projects also into the NDAA. So I guess he's saying what's good for the fossil fuel industry is good for the gander. If you want your pipelines, which by the way, it isn't looking like is super likely to actually get into it, then maybe we can push for something positive that would actually benefit the American people, like a higher minimum wage. Just to remind you really fast, in case you're forgetting the Manchin pipeline deal that we're talking about, it was a big deal in the run up to the climate bill being passed earlier this year. And if his permitting bill becomes law, it will require the president to keep a rolling list of at least 25 high priority fossil fuel and renewable energy projects that would have their permitting processes fast-tracked. The bill would severely limit input from Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low-income communities, which have, of course, historically and disproportionately been impacted by harmful energy projects. And so he's going to try to do that. Khanna and others are going to try to get the minimum wage increase in there. It's not going to be good.
All right, I love it. Let me explain all the reasons why I love it. First of all, if just pure logic, if Manchin gets a side deal, and it's called the Manchin side deal, why shouldn't progressives get a side deal? So now we've got the Khanna side deal. Yeah, like because Washington is used to, well, obviously we're going to give conservatives everything they want, and they don't even consider progressives. So there has to be a progressive leader that goes, no, you don't get our votes unless you put our side deal in too. Like the thing is, everyone watching this is going, of course, why is this even a story? Why is it controversial? Why is it? But in Washington, everyone thinks it's outrageous. How could progressives demand something? How dare you? You better get back in line, right? So now look, they keep saying, don't worry, the Manchin side deal is not very likely. That's what everybody says. So that's why reporters are accurate, including our own reporter Candace Cole, who covered this story, who broke this story, saying that all the politicians are saying on the Democratic side, it's not likely that they'll put the Manchin side deal in. I've seen them say that 1,000 times, and then sneak it in the last second, and go, oh, well, what can we do, right? So the win-win in this proposal is, well, either you're going to say no to both, right, and say, oh, all right. No, well, obviously we can't do $15 minimum wage. Our corporate bosses would be furious with us, right? So there's like that's an impossible ask. By the way, remember when Biden and all the other Democratic leaders lied and said that it was easy? They were definitely going to do that. It was among the bare minimum, if you will. Now they say, oh, impossible, impossible, right? Okay, good, then the Manchin side deal is impossible. We have a deal. At least then progressives help to kill the fossil fuel provision that he was trying to put in there. That's awesome. And look at that initiative from Khanna. And all of a sudden, by the way, we got more progressives that are joining. We'll tell you about that in a second. And so that would be a great win if progressives got to kill the Manchin side deal. Put that up on our wall, right? And then the other one is in the impossible situation where they're like, well, we got to do the Manchin side deal. All right, I guess we'll do a $15 minimum wage. I'm like, oh my God, we got $15 minimum wage. Holy cow, how did that happen? So it's great from Khanna to fight back like this. I love it. Adrian, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. This very much seems like it's a win-win situation in terms of pushing back, locking in possibly that $15 minimum wage and tethering it in the same kind of way in which Manchin did it. It really does put them in a position where hopefully the people will win ultimately. And the thing is that as you've noted, Manchin and individuals like him have been taking advantage of these little side deals for some time now. So why don't we take advantage of one for we the people? And so I really appreciate that this is done.
Yeah, we should of course consider the possibility, only because the worst thing happens a not insignificant percentage of the time that they do the pipeline and kill this. It's possible. I mean, I don't know why would they even have to consider them as linked? And by the way, just because this is a progressive thing being added in doesn't mean it has to be the only progressive thing that is added in. I would love to see many more amendments added.
Yeah, but John, there's a real problem in what you're saying. So
generally,
yeah. Look, is it true? Is it true that generally speaking in DC they'll put in the conservative provision and leave out the progressive provision? Yeah, happens nearly 100% of the time, right? But that's what Khanna's trying to prevent here. He's saying, well, then you're not going to get our votes. There is an actual vote here, right? And you need a block of votes. Now, the Democrats can easily, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi are very conservative economically. They love serving their donors. They would hate to do a $15 minimum wage. So if they had to, it might force them to go get Republican votes to replace the progressives.
Yeah.
But then look, I know there's no real reporters in the country, okay, other than Candace covering this story accurately. But in mainstream media, that would give away the game. That would tell you Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Biden, etc., are right-wingers on economic issues. But as I tell you that, there's not a single reporter that would believe that, despite overwhelming evidence.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a trick. That's not a new trick. That's a trick the Democratic leadership has done 1,000 times, where they go, oh, we need more votes, but progressives are protesting. Which, by the way, I should be fair, not 1,000 times, 7, like 2 times at most, okay? Because progressives almost never, raise a ruckus. So that's another reason why I love that Khanna's doing this, right? But the couple of times the progressives have said, no, you're not getting our vote, they immediately go get Republican votes because it's actually a right-wing proposal, right? And so, but then that tells you, oh, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, etc., are right-wingers. But the press would never write that, not in a million years. Instead, what they would write is totally counterfactual. They would say, although Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, and I keep mentioning Hakeem Jeffries because he's the new leader of the Democrats in the House, at least in the next session. Although Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer would love to do the $15 minimum wage, they have voluntarily decided not to do it and instead to do the Republican position.
Yeah, I have a question actually about that because there's one other possibility that's percolating in my mind. But really fast, you mentioned that there were other progressives who were signing on to this concept or at least seemed supportive of it. So we want to give them credit. When asked if he was on board with Khanna's push to attach a $15 hourly wage to the NDAA, Representative Jamal Bowman told the Young Turks, hell yeah, we need a $15 federal minimum wage, period. We should have done this a year and a half ago, but hell yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can make that happen. Jamie Raskin, who serves as a vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said that he hadn't been briefed yet on what Khanna had dubbed the deal for the American people to finally get a raise, but didn't shut it down, telling TYT that he'd be very curious to read Khanna's legislation. That is something, I guess, that could be significantly stronger. And also looking forward, Bernie Sanders is saying that he will work to defeat Manchin's bill in the Senate. So you have a dual track effort to try to stop that from being made law. My concern though is, so you talked about the possibility that they could tell the progressives to go kick rocks and instead they're just gonna get some Republicans to sign on, which could potentially work. Or alternatively, since there's only a month until the Republicans take over, couldn't the Republicans just refuse to play ball and gain far more control over what ends up getting put into the NDAA?
No, because they couldn't get the Senate to agree because the Democrats still hold the Senate. Whereas here, no, because
would they consider that a massive problem if it causes chaos?
The reason is Schumer doesn't want to be perceived as helping the Republicans pass something when the Republicans have the House. But right now, when the Democrats still in lame duck session have the House and the Senate, they could pass a Republican bill while pretending it's a Democratic bill, okay? And so that's like Democratic leadership 101. So that way, the fact that it's actually a right-wing proposal gets buried, and the mainstream media says Democrats do historic legislation, Manchin side deal. Guys, whatever you do not sleep on the Manchin side deal. Anytime that people in Washington tell you that a right-wing proposal is not likely to happen, it's likely to happen, okay? So they always give the donors what they want, and Manchin's is gift wrapped for the donors, for the fossil fuel donors, and not just Republicans, but as you'll see later in the show, Democrats are swimming in oil money. And so That's why I love that Khanna's fighting back. I love that Bowman gave that enthusiastic yes answer. By the way, if you guys can get involved in this too. Candace is going and asking as a reporter, hey, what is your position to these different progressive legislators? But you should ask them on Twitter too. Do you support this? There's no reason in the world why every progressive in Congress shouldn't support this. And they say killing the Manchin side deal is likely, and so great. Then it should be a no-brainer. In fact, we say progressives, but remember, almost every Democrat is pretending to be in favor of $15 minimum wage. So the entire Democratic Party should say that this should go in the NDAA if the Manchin side deal goes in the NDAA. But if you ask,
or anyway,
yeah, but if you ask 90% of Democrats, they'll never agree because they're lying. They hate the idea of $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
So that's how this game is played. And finally, there's a progressive who knows how to play it. So it puts them on a spot. I love it, and hopefully it kills the Manchin side.
Really fast, you should know that negotiators in both the House and the Senate apparently agreed over the past couple of days to add $45 billion to the defense budget, which is, I'm gonna say, a medium-sized country's defense budget. They're just gonna add it. We must, I guess, last year have had effectively no defense. We were so lacking in defense that we need to add $45 billion. It's a good thing nobody attacked us last year because apparently we had a terrible military or something. Also, nearly half of the Senate Republican caucus is threatening to block the NDAA reauthorization unless the coronavirus vaccine mandate is taken out, and all of those who were taken out of the military because they wouldn't comply with this common sense, easy to accomplish mandate were knocked out. They have to be reinstated as well.
So my view on defund the police versus the military is completely different. So I think defund the police is not a great slogan, and I think that the money in reality should be reallocated to police and mental health, which is what defund the police kind of actually wants to do. But taking away actual cops off the streets, I don't think is necessarily a good idea. Reforming the cops is absolutely essential. The fact that they can't achieve that balance drives me crazy. Okay, but when you come to defense, do we really need an $800 billion defense bill? If we had a $100 billion defense bill and saved $700 billion, would our chances of being attacked and losing a single American be any higher? I got news for you, it wouldn't. No. This is not like crime where, hey, there's no cops and then all of a sudden there's more crime because it's right there, it's on the street. No, someone actually has to attack us. The chance of that is near zero, okay? This is all pork. It's all, the defense bill is like 80% corruption. So if the Republican threat is, oh yeah, we won't pass a defense bill unless you take the vaccine thing out. I'd be like, oh, okay, make my day. And then I would say, oh, look, the Republicans apparently don't like defense. They just voted against the defense bill. Okay, what are you gonna do now, Ted Cruz? Go for it. Have at it, Hoss. Right, but Democrats are liars, the Democratic leadership. As we're telling you, I'm giving credit to Khanna, Bowman, wonderful progressives who are Democrats, but Democratic leadership, remember the $45 billion extra for no reason at all. Republicans don't control any of the houses right now. We're still in the lame duck session. Democrats have the House and the Senate and the presidency. They're the ones adding extra pork because they're also corrupt, right? So if the Democrats ever actually meant a single thing they'd said, they'd be like, oh great, go ahead, Cruz, McConnell, block the defense bill. I'd love to see it. But there's no way Schumer would do that because he agrees with McConnell. There's no way Jeffries would do that, but because he agrees with Kevin McCarthy. They can't wait to shove all that money to their defense contractor donors.
Yeah. Absolutely. It definitely seems that, of course, the objective is to maintain the status quo as opposed to actually make meaningful change for we the people. And while I definitely have different views about police and defunding the police, given that we pour too many resources and it's a militarized state and having more of them is not helping, and we should pour into other services, but also this whole defense and pouring money into the Department of Defense and giving more money toward that budget. As you've noted, who are we defending ourselves against? If anything, my God, you could probably just grab a militia from one of these states that would be perfectly adequate in fending off any defense, given how many weapons are just accessible so much in our country. It's incredibly disheartening seeing how funds are being spent when so many people are suffering, particularly right now.